Road dominance to start the conference finals. Here's John Shannon with me on 100% hockey. Vegas wins, followed up by Montreal winning. Darren Elliott, my good friend, has a theory. He calls it the fourth period effect. When you play on a back-to-back night in the regular season, the team that's playing on the back-to-back night is always better in the first period than the team that is rested. I kind of saw that in Montreal and Carolina.
You did? I mean, Montreal wasn't playing back-to-back. They had 3 days off.
No, but the rest versus rust theory.
Oh. Yeah, and yet 33 seconds in, we thought, oh, here they come, the Hurricane. I actually wonder if the Jarvis goal was the worst thing that could happen to the Hurricanes.
Maybe, yeah.
When you think about, well, here we go, we're on a roll, 8 games in a row, and then we score 33 seconds in. This is a piece of cake. And then all of a sudden, Montreal came a-charging, and Carolina played awful in their own zone. It was like a fire drill, players going all over the ice. It was fascinating to watch the team that had been so disciplined, so structured against Ottawa and against Philadelphia, had little or no structure for a good 15 minutes in the first period, and we're down 4-1.
You're just hoping to get through that first period. That's all Rod Brind'Amour was trying to do, and they didn't. That's the reality of it. But he would have expected it to be tilted early on.
So then, don't you convince your team to play conservatively? Don't take chances. They seem to want to take chances. They don't
play conservative. Carolina does. There's not a conservative bone in that room.
I wondered if there was a point, I guess at 3-1, do you even dare use your timeout? Because, and I've heard lots of coaches explain this to us, that using the timeout for game momentum, like we see so many times in the NBA, Darren. Now they have,
the traditional timeout.
Everybody's like NBA coaches have 47 timeouts, so they have this opportunity. I mean, in hockey, you only have one. But if you use your timeout, you wonder if that's a coach indicating panic or something other than that for his team. So you rarely see it. The other thing is that you see coaches looking up to the clock, hoping that they can get to the next TV timeout, where they would have a minute and a half to sit and talk with their club. But Montreal was just they were aggressive. They were faster, I think, than Carolina realized they were going to be. But I think a lot of this, honestly, wasn't on Canadiens as much as it was on Hurricanes. I think the Hurricanes played themselves into a frenzy and didn't understand how to play the game for almost 11 minutes. It was crazy.
I need to see game 2 before I'm concerned at all about Carolina.
Right. Yeah, it's funny because I had a friend of mine, gosh, eight or 9 days into the playoffs saying, the playoffs are going to go forever. Why don't we just go right to the Colorado-Carolina Stanley Cup final? Why don't we just go? Because they're the best teams. And, after 2 rounds of playoffs, the guy was actually pretty close to being bang on. And then these 2 first games, Vegas winning in Denver, Montreal winning in Raleigh, was fascinating to be able to see that. And now I think we're in line for 2 great conference finals simply because the underdog won the first game of the series.
Yeah, I have trouble considering Vegas the underdog. I understand why, because of the President's Trophy winner. But it's very difficult for people to separate the regular season from what happened late in the season and the playoffs for Vegas. They're a different team. But I get it. If you're not in
now,
it,
they're a different team because of the way they're playing, or because of Carter Hart, or
John Tortorella,
a little bit of
William
everything.
Karlsson. Brett Howden, all of it.
Brett Howden was there all year. Brett Howden was there all year. I mean,
injured for a bunch of games.
Okay,
large stretch. So
I think the Karlsson factor is an important one. I think the Hart one is an important one, and let's also remember they are doing this without Mark Stone. But they're and we touched on it on your radio show last night in Vegas. Depth is so important in playoffs. The war of attrition, the amount of injuries, and we're seeing that President's Trophy team you talked about, and trying to figure out what's going to happen with or without Cale Makar, and how the personality of that team changes with Makar out of the lineup, and how much. And this is a fascinating one, and I heard a lot about this in the last 36 hours. How much does Nathan MacKinnon try to do? How much does he try to do by himself, as opposed to just being a key cog in the wheel with Makar on the back end? You got a sense that, Nathan MacKinnon was trying to do too much in game one. Didn't you?
Yeah, and I think there was a few guys in that boat the other night that were trying to just elevate the process without
put Devon Taves in a really tough spot, because I mean.
But I didn't mind Colorado's game. I did not mind Colorado's game.
Well,
Carter Hart was fantastic.
Really good. No, he was, and that has been a part of the prescription for success for the Golden Knights through these whole playoffs, is that Carter Hart has solved a problem that, let's face it, for the first 65 games of the season was an issue in Vegas. Who is going to be the goaltender of record?
Because their availability was a factor.
Right. No. I mean, I don't care the reason. I mean, Schmid did a good job, or as well as he could at times. Hill was injured so much. I mean, and then Hart got hurt himself. So that's all part and parcel of being of the timing of being healthy at the right time.
You talk about depth. Vegas has a Stanley Cup champion goalie as the backup.
Conn Smythe Trophy winner, right? Conn Smythe Trophy winner.
Nope, not Conn Smythe. No.
Oh no, Marchessault won it that year.
Marchessault, yeah.
I voted for Hill though. So
did you?
Yeah.
Scott Burnside and Mike Zeisberger standing by.
They voted for Hill too, and I just don't understand why Hill didn't win.
We'll see if we can start a fight between those two. Get a debate going.
I think it'd be better if you and I had a fight, and that's more fun.
No, we never fight. We're good. It might be good for ratings, though.
Yes, because we're so concerned about ratings.
Burnside and Zeisberger next on 100% Hockey.
NHL TV is now on DAZN. Hockey lives here.
Here we go.
Watch every game from every team. The best players in the world. And the coldest plays on ice. Watch up to 4 games at once for the ultimate NHL experience. Sign up now at DAZN.
Continue 100% Hockey with Millard and Shannon. By the way, great reaction to John Davidson's visit the other day. How do we top that? Scott Burnside and Mike Zeisberger joining us. There's pressure on you, Burnside, to bring it today.
Well, I've been taking notes. I stayed up late. And listen, those are big shoes to follow, no question. But I am exceedingly pleased to be joined by my good pal, Mike Zeisberger, so we can share the load. And I think we'll bring the heat.
More pressure on you or the Carolina Hurricanes, Scott?
Well, I made the joke the other day. The Hurricanes won't know the way to Lenovo Center Arena. As it turned out, they did get there, but they forgot that it was actually playoff hockey. And I think it's really quite fascinating to me that as we're chatting here, after one game in each of the conference finals, that the road teams, Vegas obviously in winning in game one in Denver, and then of course Montreal, too weary, too mentally beat up, too whatever it is to compete with Carolina, comes into Raleigh and beats the Hurricanes 6-2. And again, it's so early, but the pressure on now Colorado and Carolina came into the conference final at 16-1, and now they're both chasing a series. And how great is that I think it's great for hockey fans. But yeah, I don't know that the Avs face the kind of pressure that the Hurricanes do, based on the fact that the Hurricanes, this is their fourth Eastern Conference final trip. They won 2 games in those 4 trips under Rod Brindamore, or 1 game. Sorry, 1 game. Yeah, 1 game. So the pressure's there. I don't know that the pressure's the same for the Avs, but I think it's a real thing for both. And I think how great the Golden Knights and the Montreal Canadiens have come in and flipped the narrative very quickly. And really both games were, I know the game in Denver was closer, but Vegas built a 3-0 lead. That was an emphatic win for me. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the Avs and the Hurricanes respond to, for the first time, facing adversity this spring.
You shouldn't be able to take 11 days off and be the same Zeisberger. Like that's the reality of it.
Who gets 11 days off at playoff time? Do you?
Exactly.
I certainly don't. Maybe Shanny. But, it's interesting that Scott said those 2 teams were 16-1, because aren't in the conference final, don't you juxtapose that? Isn't Carolina 1-16 in their last 17 conference final games? And look, at some point you can say, they played against the Florida Panthers and there were some, games that went to overtime. You're 1-16, okay? Get the big boy pants on. And I heard a lot about last night, same old Freddie Anderson, it was due to come. He let in some soft goals and stuff. And look, 4 goals in the first 10 minutes. I believe he only let in 5 against Ottawa in the whole series. But I think when you look at that game last night, what I would be the most concerned about is how many times a Montreal Canadiens player found himself in alone behind the Carolina defense. We've heard all this stuff all year about the way that Carolina plays and the way that they press, but their defensive system, and they don't give up a lot. And to me, of all the things I saw last night, the amount of times I saw Montreal Canadian players scot-free, no pun intended, behind their defense, that is something that's got to have to, I don't consider that something from 11 days off.
You're not judging this, though.
What?
You're not judging the series right now, though. Like it's gonna, give them a 1-game pass.
No, but I mean, it's easy to point at the goalie. You of all people, Millard, as a goalie yourself, it's easy to point at the goalie.
Hold on. He plays the position. That doesn't mean he's a goalie. Okay, so.
Well, John, let's. Hey, you were sitting beside me in Buffalo for Game 5 when Dobish let in a goal that a young Mike Zeisberger used to let in at Beer League at McGregor Arena in Scarborough through the wickets. Okay, so let's take it easy.
Yeah, but you know what though, I do think it's a really good point, and John, raised the issue, sort of half jokingly, but maybe it's not a joke, but the pressure now. Yeah, and I'm with Zeiss entirely. Listen, would it have been nice if Frederik Andersen had mixed in a save in the first 10 minutes? Yes, and we saw him, he was so good against both Ottawa and Philadelphia. And people forget, that Ottawa series was as close as you can imagine, even though the Canes ended up winning 4 straight games. That was a hard, brutal, close series. And Freddie Andersen made those stops when at any moment, going right back to Game 1, where that series could have pivoted entirely. And he
momentum shift, yeah.
Yeah. So I think the question is, Jacob Slavin, who for my money, I know he missed time and, he didn't deserve to be in the Norris ballot this year, but he is, He is an unbelievable player. People don't get it. Man's -4 last night. He said after the game, he says, I felt like I personally gave that game away. He and Jalen Chatfield are partners, combined -7 last night. I'm with Zeiss, sorry, that this is not on Freddie Anderson, but now Freddie Anderson has to come back on Saturday night, and he has to deliver a game that Jacob Dobish delivered, because I know it didn't look like it. The Hurricanes came in the second period.
Yep.
They played their style. I think they outshot them 11-3. Habs blocked a million shots, but Dobish was excellent. If the Habs get a goal beyond the Robinson goal to make it 4-3, we're talking about a great comeback win for Carolina. I believe that entirely. So it didn't happen. Dobish, unbelievable. And good on the Habs for just coming out and blowing the doors off. I think it's going to be a terrific series, but there's no doubt, John, you are right on the money. The Canes are now under the gun in game 2, and I have no doubt, maybe not no doubt, but very little doubt that they will respond, but it is going to be fun to watch, right? Both these are already great series.
But, other than that, the 11 minutes of what it can only be described as brain farts for Carolina. Yeah. Was the game equal, or was Montreal dominant? Or to me, other than that 11-minute window, this was a typical Montreal Canadian playoff game, Mike. Because and you've seen a lot of them in the first 2 rounds, where this team statistically gets outplayed. The shooting attempts are much higher for the opposition. They play strong defensively. Dobish does play very well, and Montreal comes out the victor. I mean, we saw, how many times did we see it in Tampa? How many times did we see it in Buffalo? And other than that 11-minute window, I think we might have seen the same thing last night.
I thought, John, that I had seen something I would never see before in the early 2000s when the Maple Leafs were playing the New Jersey Devils, and the Leafs got 6 shots on goal in a game.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, that was when water skiing was allowed. You could hit yourself to the back of somebody in an obstructed type of way, do stuff like that. They used that center ice red line, which I don't know how the game that we love was played by using that center ice red line back then. So it was more difficult to create offense in a lot of different ways. And then I'm sitting in Tampa 3 weeks ago for Game 7. The Montreal Canadiens went 26 minutes and 55 seconds without a shot. Shanny, that's as many shots as you had in that 26 minutes and 55 seconds.
We were the same, yeah.
And yet they found a way to win on a goal that was scored when Newhook batted a puck from behind the goal line into the net. But they found a way. Game 7, Buffalo, Monday night. We were there again. You saw that. You would argue that from the last 5 minutes of the second period through the third period, Buffalo was the better team. And yet these Canadians, find a way. I equate it to, something when we were all were kids, kids' toys, Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down. Because the Canadians, they'll buckle a little bit, but they never fold. And the funny thing, you brought up Dobish. You think about it, he's had some bad games. Game 5 against Buffalo, if it wasn't for the goalie coach, he would have been pulled in the first period. Game 6, he was pulled. And yet, I think they said last night that in Game 7s, his save percentage is .952. There is just something about this kid, that he can rebound at the best moment when this team needs him the most. And look he may have some stinkers by the time the series is all well and good, but when he's on his game, like he was last night, he's a difference maker.
How out of left field is this lead in the Eastern Conference Final and the status of the Montreal Canadiens at this stage when we look back in the regular season, Scott?
Yeah, I don't know if it's that far. It's a really good question, Darren, because I love what Marty St. Louis was doing there. You have the experience of a year ago, and they gave Washington a good run. Yep. I don't know that you can overstate the kinds of, what goes into building, the kind of experience and the mental fortitude it takes to have the kinds of series that we, as Mike so eloquently described in the first few rounds against Tampa and Buffalo. A less strong team takes a knee somewhere, right? In both those series, the Habs have a chance to close out the series at home in Game 6. They're miserable against the Sabres, lose a game, that's back and forth against Tampa in the first round. So I don't know if I'm all that surprised by it. But to me, what's fascinating, it's fascinating, we talk in the NHL so much about goaltending in such a hard position these days, it seems, to find, well, what's it, how do you build your goaltending, right? How many years Edmonton still hasn't got it in spite of having, two of the top 4 or 5 players in the world. I know Carolina's historically a team that doesn't like to spend money on goaltending. And I think Freddie Anderson bounces back if the Hurricanes go on to a Stanley Cup final. He's a UFA. What is his value on the open market if the Hurricanes get to a Stanley Cup final or if they win a cup? How do how does Dobish become this player when other teams had an opportunity and didn't see what the Habs saw? And maybe the Habs didn't see what maybe it was their, had their eyes closed and were just hoping. But what we've seen from Dobish and now what this Hab team looks like, I don't care how this series ends up. They go to a final, it's a terrific story. If they lose to the Hurricanes somewhere in the next 2 weeks, this team is going nowhere and they're only going to get better and better. So to your question, Darren, I'm not really all that surprised, and I don't care how it ends now. Oh my goodness, how exciting is this for fans in Montreal and in Quebec, because this team is, man, they are built for the long haul.
And Scott, to your point about goalies, I saw something the other day that if you took the 4 starting goalies that are played in Game 1, their total cap hit combined is less than $8 million.
Yeah.
So when you're a team now where actually in the league, there's an optimism because the cap is going to swell, I believe in 2 years, it's going to be $114 million. How do you construct and allocate those resources when all of a sudden it's like, hey, we have money for a goalie, but we don't have to spend money on a goalie? Where does that principle or philosophy change? I mean, do you just look at this as a one-off, or do you look at it and say, well, you know what? We don't need a Vasilevsky. We don't need a Bobrovsky.
You know what? Darren will remember this. We had Jeff Gorton on the show, just before Christmas. And they were in full free fall with their goaltending.
Yeah.
Dobish wasn't very good. Montembeault was a phantom. And within 2 days of doing the show, they recalled Jacob Fowler to play, and everybody said, oh, thank God, the future's here. This is Fowler's going to be Fowler's net. Now, they actually used Fowler properly, gave him a little bit of a feel for the National Hockey League, sent him back, brought him up again. I mean, is Samuel Montembeault on a milk carton right now? I mean, where is he? What has gone on? Montreal's lament at Christmas time was almost the same lament as the Edmonton Oilers. Yeah.
Yeah, and look at Dobish never got the number 1 starting job until the middle of January.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. To me, it's so fascinating because there is no clear path, right? Like if you're building a team and now you say, okay, you look at Lane Hudson and Quinn Hughes and, look at the, Cale Makar, who of course didn't play in Game 1, but okay, yes, you need a, super puck moving offensive defenseman. Okay, that's good. You need to be strong down the middle. And it used to be, oh my God, you need to have, you've got to build from the crease out. And, I go back to Sergei Bobrovsky, 3 years ago when the Panthers first, went to their first final of 3 in a row, at one point they were like, oh my God, what are we going to do with Sergei Bobrovsky? We're paying $10 million and he's not very good. And the year before he lost his starting job going into the playoffs. He lost
his net in that playoffs, Scott.
Yes, exactly. And yet, you go back to back, you go to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals, you win back-to-back cups. And I'm sure if we went back and looked at the tape, in the last few years, we're like, okay, you need a $10 million goalie. And the Panthers, are exhibit A in that. Well, now it is different. To me, it really does come down to organizationally, who do you have who's scouting your goalies, helping your goalies develop? Do you believe in them? And then you got to hope that you're right. I mean, the bottom line is you can't have lousy goaltending and have success. And I'm not, Stuart Skinner is, to me, it's such a fascinating guy. 2 trips to a Stanley Cup final. I'm sorry. Lots of ebbs and flows, but he did get you there. But you do have to organizationally have to have confidence in what you're doing, because there isn't an obvious, oh yes, if you have these, this guy here, you're going to be okay.
Hey, 5 years ago, guys, all 4 of us, 5-6 years ago, all 4 of us, if we said, what are the worst contracts in the NHL? Sergei Bobrovsky was at the top of the list.
Yeah.
$10 million for him. And then, second time skating around with the mug, and you're looking going, well, that's money well spent.
Hall of Famer.
I almost feel like it's getting harder to evaluate goaltenders than 20 years ago.
Now, why do you think that is?
I don't know. I honestly don't understand it. It should be getting easier. There's the position isn't as blocky as it used to be. It's moved on from that, but there's different elements, safe selections that have worked it in. Whether the goaltenders are too reliant on being in very repetitive situations, like the goalie skill drills, the goalie coaches, where they work so individually with goalie coaches. Maybe that's a hindrance at times.
You mean too much machine-like? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. In static drills, that kind of thing. I honestly don't know why it's become more of a challenge, but it feels like it has become that.
Yeah.
But by the way, Stuart Skinner's an unrestricted free agent. And
he's available to the Oilers.
It'll be fascinating to see what kind of interest he will garner if he ends up getting to free agency. Pittsburgh's pretty deep in that position, so you do have to wonder whether they're even going to contemplate re-signing him, or if he does sign, does he do it at a discount to stay in Pittsburgh? It's an interesting story to watch.
Well,
let's take a break. Hold that thought, Scotty. We'll take a break. We'll come back more with 100% Hockey. Millard and Shannon, joined by Mike and Scott on the podcast.
With the NHL app, you can listen to every NHL game right from your phone. And with home and away broadcast feeds, you choose your way to listen.
And he scores!
Whether you're at work, at the gym, or stuck in traffic, the NHL app puts you right in the action all season long. Every team, every game, everywhere you go. Download the NHL app and never miss a moment.
Sorry, Scott, I had to get the break in. Just finish your thought there.
Yeah, I was just, it's interesting to think about what the market looks like in the offseason for goaltenders, and what does, what our team, perpetual question in Edmonton once they figure out the coaching aspect. But what's the goaltending going to look like there moving forward? What teams are going to, look to upgrade? Pittsburgh's a great example. What happens in there? That's a team that has, been all over the map in terms of what, how do you settle on the goaltending for the future? Toronto, I think, again, once the coaching situation gets settled there, what does that look like moving forward? Because, again, at the start of the season, I would have looked at the Leafs and said, you know what? I really like that goaltending. And I think that goaltending is going to be okay. And of course it didn't. And what happened there is, a seismic shift in that organization. It's not all the goaltending, but again, it's one of the critical pieces that didn't happen the way I imagined it would. And it does, if you don't get it right, man, it really does detract so much from whatever other good things you're doing as an organization, drafting, developing, whatever it is. If you can't get that one thing right, then you're cooked.
And think about how many teams this year had fluid goaltending situations, and go through. Vegas had one. The Montreal Canadiens, the Ottawa Senators, the Toronto Maple Leafs, Edmonton Oilers, St. Louis Blues. There's a long list. It is a very unstable position right now in the league.
Well, my biggest interest when you talk about goaltenders may not be in terms of unrestricted free agency, but what happens with Jordan Binnington? I mean, you've got Steen coming in as the general manager. You've got Doug Armstrong leaving. And if I'm Connor McDavid and the clock is ticking on me in Edmonton, I'm going to look at Binnington and say, I don't care what he's done in the regular season. I've just represented Canada twice. And he's gotten us to the overtime of the championship game at both times. Yeah. I would make a run at him. But, guys, I mean, we talk about goalies. I mean, look at the free agent market, how dry it is right now is going to be in the summer, not just for goalies. I mean, John, you and I were talking about that in Buffalo. Mm-hmm. You got a guy like Alex Tuch, who many people consider to be the, gem of the free agent class. I mean, he didn't earn himself any money by the way he played against Montreal. Now, I think he is a heart and soul type player. But when the moment was there, when it was the most important time, he didn't produce. And it's going to be fascinating to me because it seems to me as teams get bigger cap room, more cap room, as the cap goes up, there's less and less players to spend money on because everybody's retaining their own guys. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be the summer of the overpayment, big time.
Yeah. You raised such a great point, Mike, about talk. I want to ask you, like, in theory, yes, going pointless, and was he -8 or -9 against Montreal? After a terrific series against Boston, do you think it really, did it cost him millions? Did it cost him $500,000? Like, I'm curious for the very reason that you pointed out. What are your options? And Alex Tuch's a good player, and yes, you would love to have him on your team because he's that kind of guy.
And he cares.
I don't know. Do you think it cost maybe it cost him less than we thought? I don't know. And that the Sabres would love to have a back. I think it's going to be interesting to see.
I think, to be honest, I think the only place it didn't cost him any money is Buffalo.
Yeah. But then again, but John, it's very hard to finish minus in an 8-3 victory, which he did in Game 6.
Wow.
Yeah.
But plus minus is, Mike. Plus minus is, there are days that they make mean something. There are days that they don't. The thing with me is I just don't think Jarmo Kekalainen, who inherited a pretty good hockey club, including Alex Tuch, I don't think that he's, unless he can go out and use those dollars and find somebody like a Robert Thomas, who they were rumored at the deadline, and then be able to say, well, I had a choice between spending the money on a star or Alex Tuch, then I made the decision. But to me, Alex Tuch has done so many things for the Sabres. He's a Western New York kid. I mean, how many times did we hear that? Well, the Eichel trade was ringing in our ears and said, well, at least we got a local guy that wants to play in Buffalo. And I think that's worth something when it comes to a player like that. I actually, so this goes part and parcel with us discussing the conference final. There's only one team that appears not to be paralyzed in making change constantly and not being afraid to do it, and that's Vegas. Go get Mitch Marner. Find a way to massage Mitch Marner out of Toronto. Take the chance. Have the balls to sign Carter Hart.
Yeah.
Whether you agree with what Carter Hart has been through or not, Carter Hart has paid his price. Carter Hart was deemed eligible to play in the NHL. And now Carter Hart has become a factor, because we've all talked about, well, where do you find another goaltender? Well, Carter Hart was sitting out there and was available to everyone. He was available to everyone. Let's say that it wasn't available to Philadelphia because they bailed on him. Yeah. And not many people would take a chance on Carter Hart, and Kelly McCrimmon and George McPhee did.
John, look at the list. Look at the list.
I would only say this. Maybe it's people who read the transcript of the trial who decided not to go that way. And the fact that he was acquitted, the acquittal is what it is. I'm not sure. Let's just say I'm guessing there were lots of reasons that teams wanted no part of him.
Right.
And I think I can totally understand, because I read the transcript and I wouldn't have wanted part of him either. And I spent a fair amount of time with him in the summer before he came out as the starting goaltender in Philadelphia. And anyway, I understand your point, and I would argue that Carolina, listen, Eric Tulsky, one of the, the new frontier of GMs, comes at it from a non-traditional hockey standpoint, but a year ago brings in Mikko Rantanen. It doesn't work out. It's obvious that's not going to happen. He pivots immediately, brings in Logan Stankoven and a couple first-round picks, and brings in Andre Miller. I do, it becomes harder and harder to make those kinds of moves. And I'm with you, John, on you do have to have a certain fortitude to make those kinds of moves. And whether it's Carter Hart, Mitch Marner, you're right. I mean, Vegas's personality, there's a lot that goes into that, but they have never been a team that's been afraid to swing big and think big and go big. I think Carolina is in that. They just do it a little bit differently. And, you got Taylor Hall here, for former Hart Trophy winner, former first overall pick, who's been so critically important to that team.
We thought he was just a notation in capology when he got traded to Carolina.
Yeah. So, but I accept I think your point's a good one, John, is that I don't think you can win unless you have that kind of fortitude and make the kinds of, hard decisions. And, Colorado, I suppose, a little bit, and bringing Nazem Kadri back.
Well, with the goaltending too, Scott.
Yep. Well, and you're right. That's an excellent point. Completely revamped their goaltending, cornering the market on the wood goaltenders. But it does take, and I think, because people can be criticized, and often are criticized. Oh, you made this deal, you signed that guy, and if it doesn't work out, then you are going to get buried a little bit on social media, and you have to not worry about it maybe.
And let's remember, Vegas changed coaches 8 games to go before the end of the regular season.
And Zeiss, before you jump in there, they make big decisions, bold decisions, but they end up being the right decisions. And you can make all the bold decisions you want. If they don't work, it's not worth a hill of beans whether you make bold decisions. Sometimes their decisions don't work always in favor of Vegas. They don't. Yeah. Dare I remind everybody who the captain of the Montreal Canadiens is?
Yeah.
No, but that worked out at the time.
It did not. Max Pacioretty was not a factor in Vegas, period. Don't give me that. Anybody that believes that.
I totally disagree with you there.
Well,
Max Pacioretty had an impact in Vegas.
I'm telling you.
Absolutely had an impact.
Would you rather have Max Pacioretty or Nick Suzuki?
That was always going to be the case if Nick Suzuki worked out the way he was going to. In the future, it was always going to work out in that case. That was a win now. That was a win now move for Vegas. They didn't win the Stanley Cup, but they got deep into the Stanley Cup playoffs. So that was not for the future. And good on Montreal because they saw it. But that's part of trading draft picks and prospects.
Listen, you're gonna whiff, okay? You're gonna whiff sometime. Nobody's batting 1,000, but I am all for the aggressiveness of these teams. You guys talked about Colorado a bit. Let's not forget you mentioned Kadri. They brought in Brock Nelson. They brought in Nate. I always say this guy's name wrong. Naked, who's been
no. So here's the key. Here's the key. When you think of Martin Necas's name, before you say it, think of nachos.
That's right. Yes.
Think of nachos. Okay, Martin Necas. It's like nachos. You know, and that's a little mind game for you. You know,
but you see, they've been aggressive with that. They let Rantanen go. Okay, and look at. I mean, they haven't missed a beat. But you look at Vegas, and whether you agree with them or not, let's go down the list. Pietrangelo, Stone, Marner, Eichel, Hannafin, Rasmus Anderson. We can keep going and going and going. When they want somebody, they go get them. And John, you and I talked about this on an earlier show. When Billy Guerin went and got Quinn Hughes, and we heard subsequently reports coming out of Washington, out of New Jersey, out of Detroit, all saying, yeah, we were in on them, but, you know, they asked for a lot. Anybody watch Quinn Hughes play? Do you think that there's going to be one of those prospects that came up is going to be the next Quinn Hughes? Look at Billy went all in, and good for him. And I think that, you know, some of these teams, I mean, you know, Scott brought this up, the Wood brothers in Colorado. I mean, this is a team that's a perennial Stanley Cup favorite. That in the middle of the season, in a span, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, in like 2 weeks, they blew up their entire goaltending. To your point, John, that takes some big stones.
Yeah.
But I think I like that. I would rather see guys try to do that than sit on their you-know-whats.
So is Vegas an underdog? Do you still consider them the underdog in that Colorado series, Scott?
I would look at me hedging my bets, doing a Vegas thing here. To me, the Cale Makar thing is a huge, you know, that swings the table, and because he's, you know, and I know that Vegas has been soldiering on without Mark Stone for 4 or 5 games now. Vegas has shown they can overcome that. I'm not sure like Avs can overcome a long-term loss of Cale Makar. So I think assuming Cale Makar comes back into the lineup, I think the Avs are still a favorite there. But no, it's pretty even. Like I just, you know, the way that they finished out both the series against Utah and against Anaheim. You know, all kinds of time for John Tortorella, even though, you know, chooses not to speak to the media, you know. Anyway, could have saved themselves $100,000. All he had to do is come out and answer a couple of questions. But I think Vegas has shown that John Tortorella in this moment is just such a nice fit. Guys seem to just respond to him so well. And, you know, I still think the Avs are not to be trifled with. And I think to me, what's different about the Avs this year than maybe the last couple of years since they won the Cup, that team has an enormous chip on their shoulder. Like they're an angry team, right? I got to tell you, they went through Minnesota.
Starting with 29.
Yeah. And that's it exactly. They take their cues from Nathan McKinnon. And again, when Cale Makar's in that lineup, he has that same, there's an edge to this team.
Surliness.
Yeah, that's a great word. Surliness. So you know what though? We're in the conference final, and historically, maybe we haven't seen the kind of drama that maybe we're going to see this year in both the East and the West. So good on Vegas and I'll tell you again. I think I told you last time we were on this show, I was accused by someone from Vegas of being a playoff format denier. Yeah. But I think it's really important that Vegas is doing what they're doing, because let's say the Avs have come in and blown the doors off Vegas, you know, and they went ahead and they swept them or won in 5 games. I think it's a black mark for the league when you have this, you know, because you go back to the playoff system.
Right.
What we're seeing now is that maybe the system isn't as flawed as some of us would believe. And certainly, if Vegas goes on and upsets Colorado, no, there won't be too many people complaining about, geez, I wish we were having a 1-8 system now, because Vegas will have proven that the system works, because it's not just, the Avs aren't just going to steamroll.
Isn't this all about, in the end, Mike, isn't this all about which team is deeper? Because when Makar leaves the system in Colorado, where is their depth? The issues that Vegas had on the blue line, Dylan Coghlan shows up and contributes. I mean, the history of the Stanley Cup isn't necessarily the superstars contributing. The history of the Stanley Cup is whose depth is better.
Well, the Habs showed that in the first round when their top line of Slafkovsky, Caulfield, and Suzuki did not have a 5-on-5 goal till Game 7. And yet they won that series because of the supporting cast. Look, I'm going to fess up. At the beginning of the year, when we do our prognostications, and it should come to nobody's surprise that I'm again wrong, but I had Vegas playing Tampa at the beginning of the year. Now, at the beginning of the playoffs, when we had to revise that, I had Colorado against Tampa, partially because I didn't like what I had seen for the majority of the season, the way that Vegas played compared to the talent that I thought that they had. And now you're seeing that. And, I know with Peter Angelo not being there, that's tough. But, a Theodore, Hanifin, Rasmus Anderson, top 3, and then Braden McNabb in there. Yeah. That's not a bad top 4 that you can throw out there. I mean, you can put either one of those pairings out as a checking line, or checking to shut down as a shutdown pairing, and not have to worry about it. And I think, we've talked about Vegas a lot. I think we're missing one of the points here, is that, man, look at what Wild Bill has done since he's come back into the lineup. Sure. William Karlsson. I mean, if at the beginning of the year, for a lot of the year, as Daren can attribute as well, Mitch Marner was playing center. He wasn't even playing in his natural position, albeit he has played there. But all of a sudden, if you would have said 2 months ago, well, one of the best lines for Vegas in the playoffs is going to be Marner with Karlsson and Howden, nobody would have thought anything of that. But to your point, John, that makes the lineup so much deeper when you can put a guy like Marner with those two guys who really, you had no expectations 2 months ago of what these guys were going to bring to the playoffs. And I do think that makes Vegas a harder team. I still do think that, the needle goes to Colorado. I love up front when you can put up the middle McKinnon, Nelson, and Kadri. But Vegas has shown. I mean, you want to match lines with them? They're a pretty deep team too, and I think we saw that in Game 1.
What if Makar doesn't show up at all?
Well, makes it. I don't think you can just gift the series to Vegas, but no. It changes. It changes obviously it changes power play. So the Avs will have to find a way to punish Vegas on the power play without Cale Makar. I thought, it just makes it more difficult. And to Mike's point and your point, John, okay. How does that depth work out? Can Vegas take advantage enough to win 4 out of 7 games if Cale Makar's not playing? It becomes, it really puts the pressure on Jared Bednar, who I think is obviously a fine coach. John Tortorella has found a way to overcome the absence of Mark Stone and keep the Golden Knights rolling. How important has the play of Tomas Hertl in the last couple of weeks or 10 days or whatever it is since Mark Stone's been out? Tomas Hertl has been outstanding, and yet it's been a very difficult season for him. It's been up and down since he came to Vegas. So good on him for doing it. But also, again, do you have the depth pieces that that can keep pushing you forward. To me, that's one of the great, fascinating parts, and it's evident in both conferences. Mike, you talked about the fact that the Habs got very little production from that 5-on-5 from their top guys. With all due respect to Andrei Svechnikov and Sebastian Aho and Seth Jarvis, it's been a real tough go for them. And were it not for Taylor Hall and Stankoven and Blake Jackson Blake, yeah, it's that things look differently there. But that's how good teams build themselves, right? So that's going to be the fascinating part over the next 10 days to 2 weeks in the Western Conference Final.
By the way, do you know how much ice time Thomas Hertl had in Game 1? Don't look.
I don't know, 8 minutes?
10:45.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm to me, that's not very much for a guy you're paying that much money to.
No, they're good minutes though.
Yeah.
They were matching a little bit up front, but that fourth line for Vegas has really flexed its muscle at times in this series or at times in these playoffs. And there's been moments where they've really turned into a third line. So
again, another trade, the Nick Dowd trade. When Nick Dowd got traded from Washington to Vegas, everybody said, "Oh yeah, Nick Dowd got traded."
Yep,
and Nick Dowd's made a difference there.
Mm-hmm. Cole Smith acquired from Nashville, so they remade their bottom six a little bit. Guys, we got to fly, but thanks for joining us. I really appreciate it, as always. And do me a favor, both Scott and Mike, check in on John later. It's unusual that he loses his temper like he did during this podcast, and I just think that it's important that you guys poke your nose in and make sure he's doing okay.
I didn't lose my temper. I found it. I found it very well.
If you think he doesn't,
I think that means it's been a good one.
If you think he doesn't lose his temper, then you don't know him very well.
Yeah, it's just he's not in a truck right now.
Oh, these urban myths. This is what we're talking about. Urban myths.
Thanks,
when
Al Strachan would raise his eyebrows on the satellite hot stove. Look out, here comes Shanny on the intercom.
Back to wrap it up on 100% Hockey with Millard and Shannon.
That's Mike Zeisberger dating himself right there.
NHL TV is now on DAZN. Hockey lives here.
Here we go.
Watch every game from every team. The best players in the world. And the coldest plays on ice. Watch up to 4 games at once for the ultimate NHL experience. Sign up now at DAZN.
You got a little pissy.
Well, because you won't admit that Nick Suzuki's a really good player and he doesn't.
Oh, he's fantastic. He's their captain. He's
and Kelly made a mistake.
But that was a win now trade.
And they didn't win now.
And it's not bad that it works out for both teams. Now, Vegas obviously moved on. We don't have to rehash it, but yeah, they took a swing at trying to win at that moment, and Nick Suzuki wasn't going to help them win at that moment.
Well, as Bob Uecker always said, swing and a miss. So anyway, that's okay. Hey, by the way, congratulations to Lindy Ruff, who on the completion of his year in Buffalo, because I think a lot of people thought Lindy was going to go off into the sunset and retire, gets a 2-year extension after a really, really impressive return to the coaching world as one of the best coaches in the National Hockey League. I'm happy for Lindy to get that kind of money and get a 2-year extension with a new general manager.
When you consider what Doug McClain told us the other day,
right,
that he thought Lindy was done after this year.
Yeah, and I would not be surprised that when the season started, Lindy thought he was done after this year too. So, but that's good on Lindy and good on what's happened in Buffalo. And you can tell the importance of the Sabres when 2 or 3 days after Game 7, people are still talking hockey on sports radio in Buffalo. And so that tells you something, that the Sabres are back and made an impact, and there's that fan base that has always been there is going to get rewarded, because the Sabres aren't going away. They're a good, young, fast, big, tough hockey club.
We'll be back with you Monday on 100% Hockey. We'll see what the weekend brings from the conference finals.
Don't forget to like or subscribe to this podcast and give us a thumbs up.
And happy Memorial Day weekend to everybody
in the United States.